Joining us tonight. It's really good to have you with us. So we are a big country, 330 million people, very diverse, very heterogeneous in terms of everything, in terms of backgrounds, traditions, the way we live, our values, our opinions. But for all our diversity, I think that we Americans can all probably agree. I think we can all come together around the somewhat obvious idea that if there is one consumer product that America needs, one thing we're just missing as a country, it's probably a gun that is specifically designed for babies. A gun specifically designed to be wielded by babies. Specifically, an assault rifle-style semi-automatic long gun made to look kind of like the civilian version of a U.S. military-issue M4 rifle, but sized down. So, like, toddlers can use them. Not toy guns, not like super soakers, squirt guns, not BB guns, not cap guns. Real guns that fire real bullets. You've heard of the AR-15? Well, now meet the JR-15, as in the junior AR-15. The company that makes it is just super cute about the whole thing. They call themselves WeOne Tactical. WeOne, not We Won, but WeOne, as in little one. Until recently, they had logos for the little girls and little boys version of this gun for babies. The logos were this little kid's skull and crossbones with a pacifier for boys, and this little skull and bones pacifier with a crossbone, with a pacifier for girls. Because why should any kid have to wait until they're done with the teething process before they can start carrying their own assault rifle? They advertised the JR-15 as smaller, safer, lighter. They apparently recently did drop the pacifier logos and the Scooby-Doo cartoon font in some of their advertising. But it's not like they're no longer claiming this is an assault rifle for babies. I mean, they could change their marketing of it, right? They could say this is for a different purpose. They could have started to say they're making this mini-sized assault rifle for people with unusually short arms. Hey, are you built like a T-Rex? Hard time reaching the steering wheel and the pedals at the same time? Have we got the assault rifle for you? Or they could market it for people with low upper body strength. Can't handle a gun that weighs more than 2 pounds? Find yourself unable to lift a carton of milk anymore? Don't worry, doesn't mean you shouldn't have a semi-automatic blowback action assault rifle of your dreams. It's specifically designed for you, great-great-grandma. When they dropped the pacifier logo, explicitly targeting the gun to the teething toddler market, that might have seemed like it was, signaling that they were abandoning the whole idea of assault rifles for kids. But no, it turns out they just dropped the pacifier logos and the cartoon font, but they're making clear that it is not just for people with little tiny arms or not just for people with very poor upper body strength. It's still definitely for preschool. And the reason you can tell that is still their targeted market for this gun is because this is the image that pops up on the splash page at their website. Clear enough? Here's another view of the same target consumer. Maybe she's, 5? I think she's 5. And if America is now marketing smaller, lighter, fully functional semi-automatic assault rifles for 5-year-olds, I mean, what's next? Why would we stop there? If they really want to get the full market share that might be available to them, maybe they could do an even littler one that babies could use in the crib. Maybe they could, fire it with their feet or something. The junior AR-15, the JR-15 for toddlers, is a real thing. For its part, the company who makes this kid gun says the reason it's so great for kids is not only because it only weighs 2 pounds and is sized for little fingers and little arms and little hands, but they're very hot to tell you that it has special safety features. The special safety feature appears mostly to be just a second deliberately awkward safety knob on the other side of the gun from the regular safety, because surely kids won't be able to figure that one out on their own. The website Snopes.com, which debunks fake things in the news and fake things on the internet, they had to do a Snopes post not long ago assuring people that no, this is not a rejected plotline from The Simpsons or from a Borat movie written to dramatize through exaggeration how insane things can get in this country. No, this is a real thing. True. Is the JR-15 a real rifle designed for children? True. Yes. It's in the news today because in the great state of Illinois, where there is a pugnacious Democratic governor named J.B. Pritzker and a Democratic legislature, in Illinois, they are about to pass a new law that would ban gun marketing, gun advertising that specifically markets guns to kids. And this is sort of the poster child kid assault rifle for that new law. Now, of course, they're not banning the gun itself. Heaven forfend. We cannot do that in this country. Just ask the U.S. Supreme Court. But they are at least trying to ban the advertising of these assault rifles for babies. California passed a law along the same lines last year. Now, other blue states, including Illinois, are following suit. Gun rights groups and their Republican supporters are absolutely outraged. They're absolutely against any such move. Why on earth would you want to limit any sort of communication or marketing targeting children with this sort of thing? I mean, from their perspective, yeah, hey, what could possibly go wrong? To this day, people don't believe me when I tell them what it is that Republicans did first the last time they got full control in Washington, the last time they got control of both the White House and the Congress. You remember when that was, right? That was the result of the 2016 election. And there was so much shock and consternation over what candidate Donald Trump had said he was going to do with the presidency and what he had campaigned on. There was so much shock and surprise over the election outcome, particularly at the presidential level. But the election outcome was that Republicans not only got the White House, they also got the House and the Senate. But amid all of the consternation and shock and all of the rapid change that portended, no one remembers what they actually did with that power once they got it. But it's true. It is as real as the AR-15 military-style assault rifle sized down for preschoolers. The first substantive thing the new Republican Congress did in 2017 when they got full control in Washington was the Republicans passed legislation that would facilitate access to firearms for people who had been formally adjudicated to be mentally ill. Not just like people who seem a little off, but like people who were formally adjudicated by the government to be mentally ill and unable to handle their own affairs. The first thing Republicans did with full power in Washington was literally make it easier for officially crazy people to get guns. To this day, people still do not believe it, but look it up. It is true. And now, naturally, along that same plot line, now we have kid-sized, fully functional semi-automatic military-style assault rifles that fire real bullets. California last year and Illinois now are trying at the state level to at least block the marketing of those. But the guns exist, and gun groups and their Republican supporters are very much opposed even to trying to regulate the advertising around this new product. I think I understand, perhaps as well as anyone, I'm going to guess, that national level American politics is hurly-burly right now. But I'm also here to tell you that what's going on in the states, in many cases, it is just as wild. And it doesn't get enough attention, I think, even when it directly illuminates or relates to or is the manifestation of what's going on at the national level. So take the fully functional military-style assault rifle for children example, for one. Take also Florida, for example, where the Florida Republican governor is not running a great presidential campaign, but he is trying, and he's so far doing better than any other Republican at mounting some kind of showing against former President Donald Trump. The strongest wind in Ron DeSantis's sails in this Republican primary, the strongest wind in his sails for the purpose of motivating the conservative Republican base, has been his claim that he would make America more like Florida, right? Make America Florida again. Ron DeSantis's pitch for the presidency has basically been, at its most successful, that his leadership in Florida is a success story. He has been electorally successful in Florida. Florida has turned really deep red. He has won re-election by a lot there. If you put him in charge in Washington, he would do the same thing for the whole country, and then he could put in place the kind of governance he's been able to pursue in Florida because he's been so successful there. That has been the sort of best version of Ron DeSantis's pitch to be president of the United States. The problem is that part of the reality of what's actually going on in Florida under Ron DeSantis is leprosy. Right? Now they've got leprosy, not a metaphor, actual leprosy. Headlines: Central Florida is a hotspot for leprosy, report says. Headline: What's behind the increase in leprosy cases in Florida? Headline: As leprosy cases rise in Florida, what you must know about the infectious disease. So Florida has a leprosy problem. Florida also has a malaria problem. Headline: Alert issued after locally acquired malaria cases confirmed in Florida. Headline: Malaria confirmed in Florida. Mosquitoes after several human cases. Headline: Health officials say Florida malaria cases contracted and transmitted in Sarasota, which hasn't happened since the 1950s. So, poor Florida. Not good news, right? Leprosy and malaria both, A, in America, B, in the 21st century, and C, in the same state at the same time. Terrible news for Florida, but particularly terrible news because it's happening at a time when Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida, because under Ron DeSantis as governor of Florida, Florida's state government is missing its top two public health officials who would be responsible for containing outbreaks and dealing with emerging epidemics. Florida doesn't have anybody in those jobs anymore, because who on earth would want to be a public health official working for Governor Ron DeSantis, whose whole Make America Florida gambit is largely based, more than anything else, on him being a COVID contrarian who now retroactively insists that COVID wasn't really a thing, and who handpicked a surgeon general for his state after the man came forward as part of a group of COVID truther quacks who, among other things, insisted that some disease, let's be honest, is caused by sex with demons. And if we could just get a handle on that problem, then why would you need vaccines? Stop it with the demon sex, you perverts. Ron DeSantis is running for president in large part on the basis of his far-sighted wisdom on COVID in Florida. His hand-picked Surgeon General in Florida came out and made it the official recommendation of the state of Florida that young men definitely shouldn't be vaccinated against COVID. Why? Because it's so dangerous. He was later found to have falsified the data that supposedly justified that conclusion. He remains the Surgeon General of Florida today. And why wouldn't he? Ron DeSantis loves him in that job. Don't worry, though. Now that it's leprosy and malaria in Florida, I'm sure they'll do great with it. And Ron DeSantis will then take that model to the whole country. Gulp. We're also seeing some interesting stuff in the states, even as it relates to the most hurly-burly thing in national politics, right, which is the legal problems of the Republican presidential frontrunner. We're going to have a little bit more on this coming up later on in the show. But even as former President Trump is charged federally, or among other things, allegedly overseeing a plot to sneak fake votes into the Electoral College count, the local Republicans who signed up to be those fake electors in 7 states, they are now facing an array of criminal investigations and in some cases charges themselves. In 3 states now, we have either overt confirmation or clear indication that the fake Republican electors are the subjects of open criminal investigations at the state level. That's Arizona, New Mexico, and Georgia. In one other state, in Wisconsin, the attorney general there won't say either way whether there's an open criminal investigation. In still another state, in Michigan, all 16 fake Republican electors have been now charged with felonies under state law. I mean, depending on how things proceed in all these other states, we're looking at potentially dozens of local Republican activists and minor officials, the Trumpiest of all, right? People who absolutely devoted to Donald Trump, who could be looking at felony criminal charges for their part in the fake elector scheme that the Trump campaign told them to carry out. There were 84 people who signed up to be fake electors. And just as it's possible to look at Donald Trump as the 1,090th defendant to be charged in the January 6th investigation, as ABC News' Jonathan Karl has been saying. I think we may also end up seeing Trump as the 85th person involved in the fake electors scheme to also face potential criminal liability for having jumped off that particularly ill-advised legal high dive. Everybody else is going to have to face trial for this stuff, but he's not. I mean, the way these things are being charged at the federal level, it really looks like what's going to happen on the fake electors thing in terms of criminal charges is going to happen in the individual states where Republicans tried to steal the vote this way. There are open, pending law enforcement decisions on this now in Wisconsin, in Arizona, in New Mexico, in Georgia, which means that part of the overthrow the election criminal liability saga is really worth watching, not just at the federal level, but in those individual states. So this is my pitch for watching what's happening in the states, again, both as a reflection of and in some cases as the most sort of peaked manifestation of what's happening in national politics. But of all the states right now, if you are picking a single one to keep eyes on right now, as in tonight and tomorrow, the one to watch, I think, is Ohio. And again, this is a fascinating story about Ohio, but it is also national news. Because ever since the conservatives on the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe last June, Republicans all over the country have been tempering their glee over that long-sought achievement. Finally, now they can ban abortion. They have been tempering their glee over that with their worry over how much the country hates that. Because however much Republicans, want to ban abortion, the country really broadly does not want that. And most worryingly for Republicans, this is something Americans are proving their willingness to commit to in the voting booth. And you can see it in the plain numbers. I mean, since Republicans got their wish and overturned Roe, there have been 6 states in which there's been a statewide vote on abortion rights, 6 of them. And in all 6, abortion rights have won by a lot. It's happened in swing states like Michigan. It's happened in liberal states like California and Vermont. It's happened in conservative states like Montana and Kentucky and Kansas. Every single state where there has been a statewide vote on abortion rights since they overturned Roe, every time voters have been able to vote on this issue, they have voted for abortion rights and against Republican abortion bans over and over and over again in all the states that have voted on it. And that is about to happen again in the great state of Ohio. This upcoming November, Ohio voters are set to vote on a statewide ballot initiative that would amend the state constitution so it protects abortion rights. Now, Republicans in the Ohio legislature and the Republican governor in Ohio, they have instituted an all but total abortion ban in the state, and Ohio voters don't like it. And Ohio voters are very likely going to they're going to vote to overturn Ohio's abortion ban when they go to vote on it in November. Everybody knows that. Ohio pro-choice people know that. Ohio pro-life people know that. People voted against Republican abortion bans in every state where anybody has voted on it since Dobbs, including in states like Kansas and Kentucky. So it's safe to say that voters are going to vote against Republican abortion bans when they get the chance to do so in November in Ohio. Unless Ohio Republicans can rig it somehow, unless they can figure out a way to change the rules so Ohio voters won't be allowed to do that. And that is why there's this big important vote tomorrow that is really worth watching. Tomorrow, weird day for an election, right? August 8th. Yeah, that's on purpose. Ohio Republicans have put forward a single-issue ballot measure that will raise the threshold for amending the state constitution from what it has been for over a century, 50%. So instead, it now has to be 60%. It's the only thing on the ballot tomorrow. It's the first time in nearly 100 years that a single-issue ballot measure has been put before Ohio voters in August. That's because everybody expects next to zero voter turnout for any single-issue ballot measure in August. But presumably Republicans' thinking was that, if nobody turns out, they'll be able to use just their small activist hardcore base to change the rules, thus depriving Ohio voters of the right to say no, the right to reject what Republicans are otherwise getting away with in that state, even though lots of people in the state, a majority of people in the state, really hate it. what's happening in national politics is absolutely bananas. I mean, the personalities are bananas. The stakes for the country of having a criminal defendant and potentially a convicted felon as the leader of one of the two parties, that's as bananas as it gets. But the place where the rubber meets the road over and over again is the states. Right? With malaria and leprosy now running up numbers in a state where they eviscerated public health infrastructure for maximum political impact in the Republican presidential primary, where blue state governors are having to come up with ways to stop assault weapons for toddlers without running afoul of Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court who will prohibit them from banning any such gun, where state-level criminal prosecutions of efforts to overthrow the lawfully elected government of the United States might not only intersect with federal prosecutions, those state prosecutions might be the only prosecutions left standing if one particular criminal defendant gets elected president and then he immediately dismantles the U.S. Justice Department, which he is definitely overtly promising to do. And where Republicans are now absolutely clear as a bell that this whole democracy thing is not going to work for them on the things that mean the most to them. When they're absolutely clear that voters hate what they're doing. And so they better come up with a way to get away with what they're doing without the voters getting a say on it. Those are all very much national political dynamics. But watch them at work tonight and tomorrow in Columbus, in Toledo, in Cincinnati, in Akron, in Youngstown, in Cleveland. Joining us now is Connie Schultz. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist who wrote for Cleveland's daily newspaper, The Plain Dealer, for nearly 2 decades. She now writes for Substack, where her newsletter is called Hopefully Yours. Connie Schultz, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
I'm so glad to be with you, Rachel. And boy, did you sum it up well. Thank you. You really laid it out.
Let me ask if, I mean, I'm looking at this from sort of a national TV show point of view, from a national perspective, but I feel like I am seeing currents of the kind of national Republican project right now in this very specific fight in your state.
Well, what I love is that, yes, you're speaking from a national perch, but you're smart about it. And, you know, you got to actually look closely at what's going on in Ohio. Their early voting numbers are, I mean, we keep getting new updates throughout the day today. They're well over 600,000 now. We're getting reports of lines and seeing video of lines all the way around the block at the boards of elections on the last day that they could vote. We don't, you know, signs don't vote. I don't tend to pay a lot of attention to yard signs, except in August, when I'm seeing so many vote no signs throughout the state, because I, of course, drive around the state. So I think, I know, no, I'm not going to do a think. Let's not do that. I know Republicans underestimated how much voters were going to care about this, and not just Democratic voters. Understand, this is more than a conservative overreach. This is a chance to, what they see it as a chance is to change representative government, right? And it's a power grab. And a lot of Republicans are seeing seeing it the same way. And you're right. They claim it, they try to make this claim that it is to save the Constitution, to protect the Constitution. And yet the Secretary of State said, no, this is about abortion. It's about abortion. The head of Right to Life in Ohio, it's about abortion, because you're right. They're afraid of what's going to happen in November. And they should be. It was overreaching. I have contended all along, ever since the Supreme Court decision, Dobbs, I don't think a lot of Republicans ever wanted to actually win it all, right? Because then they were going to face the uprising. And they have really underestimated how many voters are going to show up. And what's interesting, too, one thing you didn't mention, but I'm sure you're aware of, earlier this year they said no more August elections. It's a waste of money. This is going to be $20 million. The stunt is $20 million. Early in the year, no more elections. It's bad for democracy. It's bad for our government. And now here we are. Republicans are once again putting this on the ballot in August, and Election Day is tomorrow. I'm looking forward to voting. I'm going to do it in person. Sherrod and I both are. And we should, of course, acknowledge I'm married to U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, right? That doesn't have anything to do with my opinion, but obviously I'm going to disclose that the Secretary of State is one of the people who wants his job right now, but yet running for the Senate, but also pulling this stunt.
Let me ask you about the other side of the fight here. Is this a Democrats versus Republicans fight in Ohio? Or is this the kind of fight where, I mean, it's clearly Republicans and the anti-abortion movement that is pushing this with a lot of support from, outside of the state billionaires and all that stuff, pushing to change the threshold to make it harder for people to vote for abortion rights in November. But on the other side of the fight, is this the Democratic Party taking the lead in the organizing? Or is this a sort of more organic or more broad coalition than that in terms of people who are standing on the other side?
Yeah, this is definitely more organic. For one thing, you've got doctors organized in a way that they never have been before to protect reproductive rights. You've got organizations like Red, Wine, and Blue. Dahlia Lithwick, you of course know Dahlia. Dahlia and I were together with a large group of women with Red, Wine, and Blue a few weeks ago in Cleveland for a training session on how to get signatures for the November ballot issue. The thing I couldn't get over afterwards is how many women came up to us and wanted to tell us how this is the first time they have ever been involved in politics in their lives. And we're talking about not just younger women, we're talking about grandmothers. We're talking about a lot of women. I'm a grandmother of 8, right? This is not new for me to care about this. But what I hear them saying over and over again is, we really thought we'd be in a different place at this point in our lives. We thought the country would be in a different place. And the thing I love about the attention Ohio is getting for this is I really hope we can get over this narrative that Ohio is simply lost. It's a red state now, right? Because I do think, I don't want to make predictions, but I'm pretty optimistic about tomorrow's vote. And I am increasingly optimistic about how this is going to go in November. In large part because, as you said, it's a grassroots movement. It's been an organic movement. It's a bunch. Increasingly, what I love is hearing from women who understand that just because we're in our 50s and in our 60s and in our 70s, that doesn't mean we have to be irrelevant. And it certainly doesn't mean that we're going to be invisible. This is new. My mother's generation didn't feel this way. But we have a very different approach to life. I mean, my Substack is called Hopefully Yours because, to me, that is the only way to approach all of this, right? The laziest thing in the world to be is a cynic, because then you just give up. You don't have to do anything, right? Hope takes work, but hope is also a fact. And I see so many hopeful people involved in this right now, and it makes me happy for them because I think they're going to feel really good tomorrow.
Connie Schultz, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist who wrote for the Cleveland Plain Dealer for nearly 2 decades, and as she mentioned, married to a man named U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown. Connie, we've been watching those turnout numbers in Ohio. It's very hard to extrapolate from anecdotal turnout numbers to see what the overall turnout will be, but it does look like a lot of Ohioans are going to be out there tomorrow. We'll be watching it keenly. Thanks for being with us on this tonight.
Thanks for doing this.
All right. We got much more ahead tonight, including some breaking news on the Trump investigation, a surprise new court filing tonight from special counsel Jack Smith. I did not think we were getting this tonight. We got it. It's a doozy. It has serious implications, and we'll have that for you next. Stay with us. So there's some breaking news tonight in the latest federal criminal case against former President Trump. We knew we were going to get something in that case this afternoon or this evening. We didn't know we were going to get this other thing. Here's the situation. Let me explain it in layman's terms as I, not a lawyer, understand them. On Friday night, special counsel Jack Smith asked the judge in this case for a protective order, which basically means when the government hands evidence over to Trump's defense team for use in the trial, the judge should order Trump and his lawyers to not release any of that evidence publicly. In making that request, Jack Smith's team pointed the judge to this social media post from Trump last week. If you go after me, I'm coming after you. By putting this in their filing requesting the protective order, they were basically alerting the judge to the presence of this posting. The implication was, hey, if this is the kind of thing this guy is saying publicly at this stage, there's no telling what else he would post when we start giving him stuff that's really sensitive. So on Friday, prosecutors asked the judge for this protective order. They cited that troubling posting by Trump. Today, this afternoon, we knew that Trump's defense team had to file its reply. They did, almost as if they were confirming the contentions from the prosecutors in their filing with the judge. They took this proposed protective order, the things that prosecutors said Trump and his team should be barred from releasing to the public, and they said that a whole bunch of stuff should be crossed off that list. They specified recordings, transcripts, interview reports, related exhibits of witness interviews, Trump's team said tonight, we ought to be able to do whatever we want with all that stuff, including making all that stuff available to the public. So that filing from Trump's team saying, no protective order is necessary, you should much more narrowly tailor it, we should be able to do whatever we want with all the evidence that we get, that was the filing we were expecting tonight from Trump's team. What we didn't expect was for Jack Smith's prosecutors to come back within just a couple of hours with a big, hard-nosed response, pushing back hard on Trump's proposal. This is from the new filing from prosecutors that came in just within the last hour. Quote, the defendant, Trump, proposed an order designed to allow him to try this case in the media rather than in the courtroom. The defendant's principal objection to our proposed protective order is that it would not permit him or his counsel to publicly disseminate and publicize in the media various materials obtained from the government in discovery. They also say they want to make sure Trump is not allowed to personally write down any personally identifying information, such as addresses and phone numbers of witnesses. They say that, quote, is particularly important here because of the defendant and his co-conspirators' practice, as described in the indictment, of publicly targeting individuals. In their filing, Jack Smith's prosecutors urged the judge to implement the protective order that they proposed in order to safeguard witness privacy and the integrity of these proceedings. In other words, hey, judge, you know what this guy is like. You know he has a habit of publicly targeting witnesses against him and anybody else who goes up against him. Now he's saying he wants to be able to publicize evidence and things about witnesses that we give him as part of this trial. Don't let him do that. Again, protective order was requested on Friday. Trump's defense team had to file its response by 5 o'clock today. They did so right before 5 o'clock. Then Jack Smith's prosecutors came back just a couple of hours after Trump's team handed in their filing. When prosecutors say they want these proceedings to go speedily, this is what they mean. They are apparently not kidding around. And the judge appears to be on the same page because just in the last few minutes, oh, wait, there's more. Just in the last few minutes, the judge has ordered a hearing on the issue of this protective order to take place no later than this Friday. Again, this minute order from Judge Chutkan just handed down saying, no dawdling, people. We are going to do this week. We are holding a hearing on it no later than the end of this week. So that's happened. Here's something else to watch. As this federal criminal case against Trump hurtles along, Trump, of course, is not the only person in legal jeopardy here. Not only does he have co-defendants, we could soon be seeing indictments of other people involved in the conspiracies with which he is charged. We are particularly watching a number of state courts for new potential charges. What that might mean is next. Stay with us. So as we've been reporting tonight, Special Counsel Jack Smith and his team have been steaming along in their new federal prosecution of former President Donald Trump with new wrangling tonight, just within the last few minutes, over a potential protective order concerning what Trump will be allowed to publicize when it comes to evidence from this case. They're also apparently steaming along in their ongoing investigation of Trump, particularly related to the fake elector scheme that stretched across 7 different states. Reporter Amy Gardner and her colleagues at the Washington Post report today, quote, the Smith investigation into the electors does not appear to be over. In recent days, federal prosecutors have issued a new raft of subpoenas about the fake elector scheme in multiple states. Okay, well, there are already felony state charges pending against Trump's fake electors in Michigan. Are more Trump fake electors going to get charged in more states, given that the scheme did stretch across 7 states? Are any fake electors potentially looking at charges at the federal level? If there are going to be additional charges brought against fake electors at the federal level or elsewhere, does that open up new avenues for potential witness testimony against Trump and his existing co-defendants or any of his unindicted co-conspirators? I have many questions. I did not know this was still an open federal matter. Joining us now is Amy Gardner, national political reporter for the Washington Post. Ms. Gardner, I really appreciate you being here tonight to talk about this reporting. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Rachel.
Do we know anything about the contours of the federal investigation into the fake electors and how that investigation might differ or overlap with some of the state investigations that have already borne fruit in terms of charges in Michigan and that may yet bear fruit in other states, including Georgia, New Mexico, Arizona, Wisconsin?
I think we do. We learned quite a bit from the federal indictment last week. We learned that Jack Smith is alleging something quite revelatory, in my view, which is that the Trump campaign was basically executing a scam, he alleges, by claiming that the electors were meeting only to preserve their legal recourse should any of their lawsuits prevail in court in the various states where they were contesting the results. What Jack Smith is alleging in this indictment is that people, including Rudy Giuliani, knew all along that they were planning to use these elector certificates to attempt to obstruct the proceedings on January 6, 2021. And that's pretty remarkable. To your question, where that differs from what we think, what is happening in some of the states and what we think is going to continue happening in Georgia, potentially next week, in New Mexico, potentially in Wisconsin, where Governor Tony Evers has called for an investigation into the electors there, is a focus more on the electors themselves. It appears that Mr. Smith is focused on the Trump campaign officials, lawyers who were executing this plan, not the electors themselves. So I think that's one of the key distinctions that we see so far between the federal and the state investigations.
Can you tell anything? I was very surprised in your reporting today, very interested that you described new subpoenas, a new raft of subpoenas going out on the electors issue, even now. Is there anything different that you can tell from what you know about the new subpoenas compared to with earlier parts of the investigation in terms of how it's evolving?
Unfortunately not. We don't know very much at all. I mean, what we do know is that in the states, the focus has also included an examination of the electors themselves. We know, for instance, that in Georgia, at least 3 of the electors who voted on December 14th, 2020, for Donald Trump and sort of presented themselves as the true, proper electors, are under investigation and are targets in the investigation by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. We really don't know much more about what's happening with the federal investigation. It's not unusual, as I'm sure you know, for subpoenas to continue after an initial indictment. We also, as you noted in the previous block, there are 6 co-conspirators unnamed in the indictment, the federal indictment, and we know who 5 of those 6 are. Giuliani, of course, is one of them, and we're expecting. We don't know whether there will be further indictments, but it certainly would not be unusual for there to be additional charges coming down the pike.
Amy Gardner, a national political reporter for The Washington Post, who's been really hot on this story for a very long time now, and as it continues to evolve. I really appreciate you keeping us updated, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, we've got state-level charges already against fake electors in Michigan. We know or have reason to believe there are open criminal investigations of other Trump electors in Georgia, in New Mexico, in Arizona, and possibly in Wisconsin. Eyes on those states as this stuff continues to evolve. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, chào mọi người quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình sẽ hướng dẫn cho mọi người cách móc một chữ cái ở trong bảng chữ cái alpha, mà là bảng chữ cái tiếng Việt của chúng ta thì cũng có chữ E như thế này. Đây, chữ E ở đây mình sử dụng một màu hồng duy nhất. Ở đây thì mình cũng sử dụng, ở đây mình chỉ sử dụng mũi cơ bản, đó là mũi trượt và mũi đơn để chúng ta có thể móc ra được một chữ E như thế này. Nó thực sự là không khó để móc, cho nên là nếu mà mọi người thích cái chữ E này của mình thì mọi người cố gắng xem từ đầu cho đến cuối video để chúng ta có thể móc được một chữ E như thế này nhé. Và chữ E này chúng ta có thể móc từ trong kính lên mũ hoặc là lên túi xách, cũng rất là xinh. Và nếu mà mọi người thích tên này thì nhớ theo dõi và ủng hộ video này của mình nhé. Còn bây giờ thì chúng ta cùng chuẩn bị những nguyên liệu và dụng cụ cần thiết để chúng ta có thể móc được chữ E như thế này thôi nhé. Và chúc mọi người sẽ có một chữ E thật là đẹp của riêng mình nhé.
Cần chuẩn bị những nguyên liệu và dụng cụ sau đây: kim móc đầu 2, kéo, kim khâu, đánh dấu và cuộn len màu hồng. Đầu tiên chúng ta lên 19 bính. qua một chân, móc vào chân tiếp theo một mũi đơn và chúng ta móc thêm 17 mũi đơn nữa. Tổng hàng này chúng ta sẽ có 18 mũi đơn. Sau đó lên một bính, chúng ta móc hàng thứ hai 18 mũi đơn. Sau đó chúng ta lên một bính, xoay ngược lại, móc 3 chân đầu 3 mũi trượt. cùng. Có một miếng này chúng ta lên 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sau đó bỏ một chân móc vào các chân còn lại, mỗi chân một mũi đơn. Chúng ta sẽ có 8 mũi đơn. Sau đó chuột vào chân đầu tiên một mũi chuột này, sau đó trực tiếp